Strait of Hormuz. Eastern approaches near the Musandam Peninsula. 2:17 p.m. broad daylight. Clear skies. Hard afternoon sun reflecting off flat water. A U.S. Navy surface group. 1 Arleigh Burke, class destroyer, 1 Ticonderoga-class cruiser, 1 expeditionary sea base. Moves westbound at 16.4 knots inside a 2.3 nautical mile traffic lane. Then the IRGC Navy arrives. Fast inshore attack craft, missile boats, and armed skiffs surge out in a coordinated ring. 18 hulls in total. Close into inside 1,200 yards. Their plan is simple. Isolate one ship, force a collision, board, capture Americans on camera. What happens in the next 50 minutes becomes a daylight lesson in modern naval lethality. This is that story. 2:19 p.m. The first Iranian FIAC pair cuts across the bow at 38 knots. 220 meters ahead, rooster tails visible for miles. The U.S. formation holds course. No panic. No turn away. On the cruiser's bridge, the tactical action officer, Lieutenant Commander James Klein, watches the surface plot bloom with contacts. The icon labels come fast. IRGC and FIAC clusters, a PACAP-class missile boat, a pair of Bagamar-style fast boats, and several unmarked skiffs riding low in the water. The strait is narrow here, at its tightest, about 21 nautical miles wide, and that geography is Iran's theater. Source: the Iranians believe they're in control because everyone can see everything. That is their first mistake. 2:21 p.m. The U.S. destroyer Spy. 1 radar locks the entire swarm in a single coherent picture. Surface search. Air search. Fire control quality tracks. The ocean becomes a grid. On the flight deck, an MH-60 RC Hawk. Call sign Viper 12. Spools up. Its crew chief, PO-1 Marcus Hale. Checks the loadout twice. AGM-114 Hellfire missiles with known engagement range out to roughly 7.1 to 11 kilometers depending on profile. Source: the IRGC boats keep coming anyway. If you're here for real military pacing and real-world capability, lock in now. Subscribe, because this is what happens when you test U.S. ships in broad daylight. 2:23 p.m. Iran's ring tightens. The closest skiff flashes within 150 yards, inside the distance where even a warning flare feels late. The U.S. commander, Captain Daniel Mercer, does not raise his voice. He just changes posture, set modified zebra, man all mounts, weapons tight, then weapons free on hostile act. The sea is bright enough to read hull numbers with binoculars. Visibility becomes psychological pressure because the Iranians know they're exposed and they can't hide a thing. They press anyway. 2:26 p.m. The Iranian missile boat shifts to the outside arc. Try and stay beyond machine gun range while its smaller craft provoke a reaction. It's classic swarm doctrine. Distract with many, threaten with one. But the U.S. formation isn't a single ship. It's a networked weapon system. 2:28 p.m. Viper 12 lifts off and climbs to 700 feet, turning north to put the sun behind its aircraft. Against the glare, it becomes a dark speck. Hard to range, harder to hit. On the destroyer's deck edge, the phalanx CIWS mounts track and tests. Silent, automatic. Everyone aboard knows the spec. Up to 4,500 rounds per minute, 75 rounds a second. A last-ditch wall of 20-millimeter steel. Source: the Iranians can see the turret movement. They can't process what it means at scale. 2:31 p.m. First radio warning goes out on bridge to bridge. Clear English, then Arabic, then Farsi. Iranian vessels, You are approaching a U.S. naval formation. Alter course immediately. The closest FIAC responds by accelerating. That is their second mistake. 2:34 p.m. The U.S. cruiser slews its Mk-45 5-inch gun toward the lead skiff without firing. The barrel's mere alignment is a statement. The range is already inside 13 nautical miles for conventional rounds, comfortably inside the envelope. Source. And the Iranians keep tightening. They believe the U.S. won't shoot first in a crowded strait. They are wrong. 2:37 p.m. A skiff on the southern arc raises a weapon, an unmistakable shoulder-fired tube. One motion, one silhouette, in broad daylight. The U.S. destroyer's crew doesn't debate what it is. Hostile act indicators are met. The escalation threshold is crossed in one visible second, without any ambiguity. What happens next is not negotiation. It is execution by doctrine. Stay with the timeline, because the next 12 minutes show how fast a modern Navy compresses chaos into kill chains. 2:39 p.m. Viper 12 calls. Laser on. Target, southern arc, FIAC with launcher. One Hellfire leaves the rail. It covers the distance in a blink. Supersonic closure, a clean line, no drama. The FIAC erupts into a flat orange bloom, smoke column rising straight up in windless air. The blast is clearly visible from every boat in the swarm. The ring pauses for half a breath. Then the Iranians surge forward anyway. That is their third mistake. 2:42 p.m. The U.S. cruiser opens with warning fire, not at boats, but into open water for 100 yards ahead of the lead craft. 5-inch rounds punch the sea into towering white pillars. The message is final. Turn away. The IRGC boat split. 3 rush toward the Expeditionary Sea Base, believing a larger ship means slower reactions. They want proximity. Cameras. A forced standoff. That assumption is fatal. 2:45 p.m. The U.S. destroyer's remote weapon station barks short bursts. Precise, controlled, not spraying. 2 skiffs are hit through engines, losing power, slewing sideways in their own wake. The Seahawk repositions, descending to 500 feet, holding a lateral offset. From above, the swarm looks like scattered ants on a mirror, and in perfect visibility. Every ant is trackable. 2:48 p.m. The Iranian missile boat, Paycap class profile, angles for a shot lane. It needs seconds, a stable bearing, a clean firing solution. It never gets it. The U.S. formation's fire control solution arrives first, not with a single weapon, with layered options. If you want more stories like this, high intensity, minute by minute, hit subscribe now. This is what happens when you try to surround a fleet built for simultaneous war. 2:50 p.m. The U.S. destroyer launches 2 RGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles. Subsonic, sea skimming, high confidence. Harpoon variants are widely documented in the 120 km class for older models, with higher range versions existing, but the key is the profile. Low, fast enough, hard to intercept at close notice. Source. The missile skims so low the horizon seems to swallow them. The Iranian missile boat tries to turn away. It turns too late. 2 impacts, one at the waterline, one amidships. The hull breaks into burning compartments, black smoke climbing like a signal flare. The outer arc collapses. 2:53 p.m. The remaining Iranian craft attempt their real play. Mass the inner ring and force the U.S. ships to hold fire due to proximity. They push inside 300 yards, weaving, hoping the rules of engagement become a cage. But the ROE isn't a cage. It's a trigger. Captain Mercer authorizes. Engage designated hostile craft. Disable, then destroy. And the U.S. assets respond exactly as designed. Overwhelming, coordinated, immediate. 2:56 p.m. The MH-60R fires again. Another Hellfire, another FIAC, hit mid-hull. The boat folds, then disappears beneath the surface in under 18 seconds. The cruiser's 5-inch gun shifts from warning waterspouts to direct fire. Single rounds, spaced, surgical. One skiff becomes debris. Another becomes a burning raft. The destroyer's 25mm and .50 cal mounts rake engines, steering stations, expose gunners. Not random violence. Systematic elimination. In bright afternoon sun, there is nowhere to hide and no time to think. 2:59 p.m. Iran tries to salvage the moment with volume. Multiple boats release smoke canisters. Gray curtains roll across the water. It looks dramatic. It does nothing. Thermal optics see through it. Radar sees through it. The smoke only marks their positions, visible for miles, a moving shoot here banner. That is their fourth mistake. 3:03 p.m. The IRGC swarm breaks into 3 groups, north, center, south, attempting to escape to Iranian territorial waters. They believe a borderline is a shield. But the engagement zone was decided the moment they accelerated and raised weapons. The U.S. commander doesn't chase with one ship. He boxes them with geometry. The destroyer increases to 28.6 knots, cutting a diagonal to sever the northbound group. The cruiser holds center lane, guns hot. The Seahawk hovers like a predator, keeping the southern runners inside Hellfire range. The sea is glassy. So are the consequences. This is what happens when you bet your life on speedboats against integrated sensors. 3:07 p.m. One Iranian skiff attempts a last desperation move, closing head-on toward a destroyer's bow. Too fast, too close, hoping to force a collision or a boarding scramble. The destroyer fires a flare. The skiff keeps coming. The CIWS tracks. The fire and decision is instantaneous. A 2-second burst. A metallic roar. The skiff disintegrates into splinters and spray. The wake carries fragments like confetti across the sunlit surface. The rest of the swarm sees it. They finally understand the math. 3:11 p.m. The Iranian craft try to scatter. Scattering is not escape when every hull is tracked. The U.S. cruiser's 5-inch gun walks rounds across the waterline of a fleeing FIAC at 2,800 yards. First shot cripples propulsion. Second shot sets fuel alight. Third shot ends a hull. A fourth boat attempts to tow it. The Seahawk kills the tow boat with one Hellfire. And now the retreat becomes a slaughter. If you're still watching, you're watching the moment Iran's plan collapses in real time. Like, subscribe, and stay in the fight with this channel. 3:15 p.m. The last functional IRGC missile-capable craft makes a hard turn, trying to vanish into clutter near small commercial traffic. But visibility is perfect. The sea is open, and the U.S. formation holds discipline. No wild firing toward civilians. Only clean angles, controlled arcs. The destroyer executes one more Harpoon shot. Single missile. Precise. The impact turns a boat into a burning ring. Smoke thick enough to stain the sky. The water around it flickers with fuel fire. It's visible from the shipping lane. It's visible from the coastline. It's visible in every camera that thought it was coming to film Americans kneeling. 3:20 p.m. Now it's mop-up. The remaining Iranian skiffs are either disabled or surrendering by behavior. Engines cut, drifting, hands up, weapons overboard. But combat isn't over until the threat is gone. The U.S. ships keep weapons trained. Helicopters circling, optic scanning for concealed launchers, for mines, for a last-shot martyr. None arrives, because Iran's fifth catastrophic mistake was believing intimidation counts as control. 3:25 p.m. The U.S. formation recenters in the traffic lane. Damage reports come in. American casualties, 0 killed. For wounded, minor fragmentation injuries from one ricochet off a rail stanchion, treated on board within 9 minutes. No ship takes a direct hit. No fire aboard U.S. hulls. No flooding. No lost aircraft. Iran's losses are unmistakable and floating. 3:31 p.m. The final two hostile craft, both still maneuvering, attempt to sprint for the Iranian side at 41 knots. The Seahawk drops lower. For 120 feet, sun at its back again. It fires twice. 2 Hellfires. 2 hits. 2 boats fold into the sea. The water closes over them like a lid. And the strait goes quiet except for crackling fuel fires and distant commercial engines. This is what happens when you threaten U.S. ships in broad daylight. 3:39 p.m. U.S. commanders count wrecks and confirm kills through optics, radar, and ISR feed. 18 Iranian hulls are accounted for. Missile boat destroyed, multiple FIAC sunk, remaining craft disabled and burning. The daylight is still perfect, which means the aftermath is also perfectly visible. Smoke columns rise straight up, black against pale blue sky, drifting only slightly east. The fires mark the sea like a dotted line of failure. 3:46 p.m. The U.S. formation transmits a final warning on open channels. Any further approach will be engaged. The message is heard across every frequency that matters. Iran's surviving boats keep distance. Far distance. The ring that was supposed to surround the fleet is now a perimeter of wreckage. 3:07 p.m. was a turning point, and it never turns back. If you want the next documentary-level reconstruction, subscribe now, because the Strait of Hormuz is where myths go to die. 3:09 p.m. But Iran made 6 catastrophic mistakes. First, they assume proximity equals safety. The reality is proximity triggers close-in doctrine and removes their own reaction time. Second, they assumed U.S. commanders would freeze under cameras. The reality is ROE is written for daylight ambiguity, and hostile act indicators end debates instantly. Third, they assume smoke would blind American sensors. The reality is radar, thermal, and networked. Optics see through it and turn smoke into targeting contrast. Fourth, they assume the biggest ship is the easiest target. The reality is every ship in the formation is a sensor node and a shooter, and the slow ship is protected by layered guns, helicopters, and missiles. Fifth, they assume borders are shields. The reality is aggression in international transit lanes is answered immediately, and escape vectors are cut by speed and geometry. Sixth, they assume the swarm is a weapon. The reality is a swarm is just many targets when the opponent can track, prioritize, and engage simultaneously. 3:52 p.m. The U.S. group slows to 12 knots, reestablishes formation spacing, and clears the lane for commercial traffic. A U.S. medical team stands by for any Iranian survivors, because the mission is control, not chaos. But there is no sympathy in the tactical picture, only outcomes. 18 hostile hulls removed in under 50 minutes. Daylight, clear skies, perfect visibility, and a lesson delivered at the exact place the world's oil must pass. If you watch this far, you already know. Never threaten the United States Navy in its own engagement envelope. Like, subscribe, And keep your eyes on the next one. 4:01 p.m. Final ordnance tally comes across the net. Harpoon missiles. 3 fired, 3 hits, 3 mission kills. AGM-114 Hellfire. 7 fired, 7 confirmed kills, each within documented short-range envelope. Source: 5-inch rounds. 14 fired, 11 direct mission kills, 3 disabling shots that ended propulsion. CIWS: 1 short burst, 1 boat erased, because 4,500 rounds per minute doesn't negotiate. Source: crew serve in remote mounts. Sustained control fire engine kills, steering kills, weapons kills. No wasted motion. No repeated warnings. Just a timeline. 4:06 p.m. The strait returns to routine. The smoke lingers longer than the fight did. From a distance, it looks like a small war. Up close, it looks like a single decision executed with overwhelming capacity. Iran's plan was to create an image of American ships trapped. The actual image is Iranian wreckage scattered across sunlit water. For 11 p.m., the U.S. formation transits on, intact, unbroken, still in broad daylight. The sun is still high enough to make every scar visible, which means the final message is visible too. Total American victory, delivered once. Clean. Final. If this is the kind of high-intensity documentary narrative you want every week, subscribe, because the next flashpoint always arrives without warning. 4:18 p.m. The after-action report is brief where it matters. American, 0 killed, 4 wounded. Iranian, 18 craft destroyed or sunk, 173 personnel confirmed lost. 41 rescued and detained for intelligence processing, and an entire local swarm capability removed in one afternoon. A casualty asymmetry so lopsided it becomes deterrence. And deterrence is the real objective in the strait. 4:23 p.m. The last smoke column thins. The sea reflects the sky again. Commercial ships pass at lawful distance, horns muted, crews staring. They saw the same daylight. They saw the same consequences. And every future commander in that waterway now has one reference point. 50 minutes. 4:27 p.m. The U.S. ships do not celebrate on the net. They reset. They reload where needed. They continue the mission. Because in the U.S. Navy, the message is never emotional. It's operational. Closing recap. 2:17 p.m. The U.S. formation enters the strait in clear skies, perfect visibility. 2:19 p.m. 18 IRGCN craft form a ring and close inside 1,200 yards. 2:39 p.m. First Hellfire strike deletes the first FIC in daylight. 2:50 p.m. Harpoon impacts break the missile boat threat and collapse the outer arc source. 3:07 p.m. CIWS ends a last head-on rush. 2 seconds, total destruction. Source: 3:31 p.m. Final Hellfire pair finishes the last fleeing craft. 3:46 p.m. The strait is quiet again and the message is broadcast on open channels. American losses: 0 dead, 4 wounded. Iranian losses: 18 craft destroyed, 173 dead. Capability erased in under 50 minutes. Total U.S. ordnance deployed: 3 Harpoon, 7 Hellfire, 14 5-inch rounds, 1 CIWS burst. Strategic lesson: daylight intimidation fails against integrated sensors, layered fires, and commanders who execute doctrine without hesitation. If you want more ultra-realistic combat documentary scripts, subscribe now. If you want the next timeline reconstruction before it goes viral, hit like and turn on notifications. And if you ever doubt how fast a modern fleet can end a swarm, Share this story. Never surround U.S. warships. Never test a fleet.